Hello and welcome to UI Made Simple. In the last video we have created our health bar widget and the HUD widget where to put the health bar, and we have added it to the viewport. In this tutorial we are going to do the exact same thing that we did in the previous video in Blueprints, but in C++, adding the widget to the viewport. If your project is not currently set up to use C++ or you do not wish to use it, you can safely skip to the next video as we won't do anything new. I am currently using JetBrains Rider 2022.3, but you can use Visual Studio Community or any other IDE of your choice. So let's get straight into it. I'll drag my window across and let's start. So the first thing that we need to do, the very first thing that we need to do before adding any classes is make sure that UI is enabled in code, because by default if we open this C# file from here, the .build, it's the name of your project .build.cs, you will be presented with something like this, a list of dependency modules. Now, these are coming enabled by default, but because we're going to use UI, we need to add at least for now 2 more very important modules, which are UMG and Slate. If we and Slate Core actually, 3 very important modules. UMG will allow us to use user widgets and anything else that derives from them. Slate and Slate Core will give us access to modifying underlying Slate code and using it. If you do not have this, you will be getting some nasty linker errors. Let's go and create a new folder inside the project folder, common components. We don't actually need to create a game mode base in C++ because we can reuse the one that we've made in Blueprints. There is no logic in that, so I'm gonna go straight into creating a HUD class. So we're looking for a HUD type class, which is gonna be called a HUD, I think. There we go, HUD. So this is the a HUD class, and we're gonna call it demo HUD. Let's hit OK. Let's have a look at what we did last time in Blueprint. So we had a begin play event, and then we took the player controller, checked if it's valid, created a HUD widget, and then added it to the viewport. So like I said, we're going to do the exact same thing in C++. So what we want to do is override the begin play method, which is a protected method. And then we are going to generate the body for the definition for this method into the CPP file. Let me move this side by side because it is easier to work with them side by side. And then we will need a template to create our HUD. When we create widgets from C++, they can't be simply created from a dropdown because we do not have this dropdown here. But basically what the create HUD widget node does is it's taking this class reference, you see it's purple, it's not blue, it's a class reference to the HUD widget, and it's creating an actual object from that class reference. So we do need to do the exact same thing here. We'll add a private member, uProperty edit anywhere, so we can edit this in Unreal, and it will be a T subclass of user widget. HUD template. Right. The T subclass of basically says this HUD template is a child that at some point is inheriting from user widget, which is true. Our blueprint is inheriting from user widget, and we want to initialize it with null pointer to make sure that it is it's got some memory allocated to it. Now, this is the subclass that we will be creating our widget from, but we also need a pointer to store this widget once it's created, to store the object, because if we don't store it, then it will be garbage collected and the HUD will just disappear essentially. So let's create a uProperty. We'll make this transient because transient by definition it means something that is not always going to be there. This will be created at runtime and only exist at runtime. So we can either make it a t-week object pointer, or we can make it transient to signify that this object will only exist once the game has started, once the game has begun to play. I like to make them transient. If you know a reason why to use the weak object pointer instead of transient, please let me know in the comments. I would like to know which one is preferred. But in this case, we'll make a t object pointer. It will be also a user widget because that's what we're creating, and it will be our HUD widget initialized also as null pointer. So again, the difference between the template and the HUD widget is the template is the pattern, the matrix that we're using to create an object from, and the HUD widget will be that object that we'll be creating. So let's do that. In begin play, first thing we want to do is check if our template is null or not. We're gonna have HUD template. You can either check, so this is an important tip. You can either check if something is null or valid, like this if it is a U object, or you could also check like this. Now, this, by definition, by comparing it with a null pointer, all it's doing is it's looking at this class or object and checking if it's a null pointer. That's exactly what it's doing. It's very explicit to check if it's null pointer. It's valid though. It also, if you hover over it, you see that it returns true if the object is usable. So it checks if it's non-null, and it also checks if it's not pending to kill or garbage. What this means is that if by any chance our object has been marked for garbage collection or has been nullified and in the process of being destroyed, because destroying objects in Unreal is an asynchronous operation, it doesn't happen all of a sudden, they're marking them to be destroyed and then destroy the objects, then this is valid will return false. It won't be valid anymore if it's been marked to be deleted. So the safest way to check U objects for being usable is to use is valid. Let's see what this error is, because it's not finding the user widget, which means this needs to be included in the headers that we want to use in this class. So we can either look at the user widget base class, so we can control click into that base class and see where it is coming from in the engine files, but that means that you will have to have the engine files also downloaded for Unreal. I think it's called symbols for debugging, which takes another 30 or so gigabytes of space. But if you do go to that file and then you find it in your hierarchy, you see that this is coming from UMG, which we have included already, remember, here, and then blueprint, and then user widget, which means we can type in include blueprint user widget. But if you do not have the project files, or you do not know how to find the file in here, there's an easier way, which is the API documentation. We'll see that at the very top, all the classes will have this, right? In the API documentation, you'll find the name, the type, the header file, which already has a path in it, right? And it also has the include path. You can simply copy the include path from here into that, and that will also solve your problem. Right. Let's finally create a widget. So we're going to use our HUD widget from here. Create widget, and this is actually a templated function. Create widget is a templated function, so we can tell it already that this is going to be a user widget. Here, the owning object is going to be what owns this new object that we're creating, what owns this user widget. We'll have to get the player controller. Remember, like we did in Blueprint. So we need this player controller so we can pass it in. So let's get a player controller. Okay, and then obviously we want to check this player controller as well. And then once we've made sure that this is valid, then we want to use it inside here. And then we want to pass in the HUD template that we were talking about earlier, and we have our widget. So there is a TObject pointer user widget. Now all we have to do is just add this to the viewport. Perfect. Let's try and recompile this project. Okay, so our project is back up and running. Let's go and use our HUD class. So we're going to go to our common demo HUD, and then the first thing is to disconnect this, make sure that this is not used anymore. And we will go to class settings. Class settings is up here. And then the parent class, we don't want to use the base class anymore. We want to use the one that we've just created, which should be UI made simple demo HUD. Save and compile. Go back to class defaults, and very importantly, let's not forget to assign our template. So we have our HUD template here because we made it edit anywhere. We need to make sure that this is actually assigned to what we need. So we need to give it the HUD widget because that's what we want to create. So save and compile this. Make sure that this is disconnected so we don't use the blueprint anymore. Go back to your level, hit play, and we have the same result, but now we've added it via C++. As usual, thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful and you've learned something new today. And in the next video, we're gonna have a look at how to create the 3-stage material for this health bar that we'll be using to represent the current health, the changing health, and then the bar itself.